I had studied pretty much everything except really checking out Christianity. That's what was so crazy about the Jehovah's Witnesses. They were talking about, this world is going to end and you shouldn't go to college. And I'm going like, you're saying people shouldn't go and learn and know things? Robin's drowning, it's just one of those tragedies. Jan passed away August. I set it up over there at Jones. We did the whole thing. Boom, it happened. After I did that, his brother said, why didn't you have it in the Kingdom Hall? And I said, because Jan didn't want it in the Kingdom Hall. And I don't know. All hell broke loose after that. Next thing I know, they said there was going to be a judicial committee meeting and this, that, and the other. And it was like, huh?
This is Seeds Awakening, your home for higher frequency conversations on Amani Channel. And I'm getting personal again this week by interviewing my father, Charlie Channel, who has many lessons that he shares in this interview about his life, about joining Jehovah's Witnesses, about getting disfellowshipped, and everything that happened in between, from having B-years to us going to college. He shares all the runs, hits, and errors. But first, make sure you smash that like, hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel. But if you do nothing else, just hit the like, pay it forward, share this content with someone who may benefit. Alright, so I'm bringing Charlie Channel now. He's a friend, a role model, and a great example to me and my siblings. Let's just share his story now, and we'll pick up this interview in progress. We start out by talking about his father, lessons that he learned, and then we get into some of the changes that have been affecting Jehovah's Witnesses and his take on the many changes that now allow kids to go to college, to have beards, all those things. So let's check out Charlie Channel and meet him now.
He had this thing about anything you're doing to the best of your ability. Be true. Do not compromise. Do not be lazy. Don't be half-assed. I mean, he was one of those kind of guys, If you cleaned a window, he asked you to clean a window, you left a smudge on it. He'd say, what the fuck is that? I hope you don't wipe your ass the same way. That's the kind of guy he was,
Mm-hmm.
the way he would just come at it, and he was a leader. But so what he said was that if you work with your mind, you're going to die eventually anyway, but you'd get a much longer period of time to be productive as compared to using your body. So back to your point, about the Jehovah's Witnesses being about 60 years behind the time, saying, well, now it's okay to go to college. Oh, gee, you're inspired by God, right? after the whole paradigm has shifted back to, just go to trade school and become a welder, and you're going to be making $100,000 and $200,000 a year overtime. Now you're saying, oh yeah, go to college. I mean, and that's where those cats went wrong with me. I mean, there were some fundamental values I learned as a young person that were passed on to me by my father, and he's the one who bought a house, he's the one who had his own business. You as any man right now, I would say, let me see you start a business. I don't care what it is, let me see you start a business. My father did that as an African American in the context of when the discrimination and the racism was palpable. It's when any white man would walk up and say, get on the other side of the street. It's in the context where you're not even allowed to look at a white woman. You understand? That's what he grew up in, right? And, you know, all of the, what do you call it? The discrimination, you know, discrimination in the law, discrimination in fact, de facto, you know, it was right there, you know, based upon the color of your skin. So, you know, uh, like I say, those brothers, man, they look, the hypocrisy of the church was what caused my dad to walk out saying, I'll never walk into a goddamn church again. You know, he found it in the Baptist, you know. And now somehow, you know, I mean, he could read, though he didn't read well, but he read and he understood what was in there. And it's sort of like he grasped this notion of truth, what truth really is, you know. And so he knew what a lie was, and he knew what it says about thou shalt not this, blah, 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 you know, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so like, you know, for me, the whole crisis of conscience came with regard to wearing a beard and what you kids went through, you know. I mean, first they come up and say, well, you know, this is a matter of conscience, you know, that you make your dedication to God. Nobody, you go, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's an internal thing. It's within each human being, you know. And then come into me and say, hey, by the way, your kids got beards and like we shouldn't have beards, you know. And I go, well, talk to them about that. That's their thing. It's a personal thing, you know. Number one, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I was shaving at the time, you know, but I don't see anything wrong with the beard, you know. Well, hey, you know, you're a ministerial servant, and you know you need to climb on board, you know. And it's like that ain't what it says, you know. And you know when they came at me like that, they didn't really understand. It gave me a heartache. I mean, I won't be profane, but you know, UMF, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, my heart was like literally like, don't tell me to, it was like you're telling me to vote for Trump. There's no way I could vote for that man consciously. I mean, I just couldn't. I come from a working class family. You know, I am a worker. I have done things. I know how to do a lot of things. So I know when he's talking bullshit because he's never had calluses on his hands. I've had calluses on my hands. You know, I've been so tired that I didn't like the sun coming up because I'd have to wake up. You know, I felt that, you know. But the same thing when they were talking about beards, yeah, it just like, nah, man, you know, you cats deal with it yourself, you know? I mean,
So take, yeah,
that,
so
that
take,
that's where I was coming from. So, but back to your point. No, yeah, it's sort of like the cats, Jesus Christ of late Latter-day Saints, you know. I said, hey, you know, this is back in 1980s. You know, they're proselytizing, they come through, and I go, hey, man, like I heard you cats said that an African American couldn't be a high priest, and you couldn't. That was their dogma, their doctrine. I said, man, why would you even ask me to join something that denies my humanity? You're asking me to not be a human being, you know? He said, well, you know, yeah, that was back then. And like the brothers had a revelation and the high, I go, yeah, the revelation occurred 15 years or so after the United States Congress passed the law. How does that square with the God who knows everything?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? It don't. Y'all can kiss my ass. Okay, I didn't tell him that, but you know, yeah, no, man, that's messed up, man. That's messed up. The discrimination and stuff, and the Jehovah's Witnesses did the same thing. Very much aware of all of that. Very much conscious and aware of that. Awake, so to speak. You know.
So take me
So here
back.
they are. Here they are, 40 years later, 50 years later, and say, yeah, man, just get a trade and, no, they're saying, no, go to college and spend $150,000 to get out and find that your ass is in debt.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's okay to wear a beard,
Which it is.
Yeah, come on, man. I mean, socially and all of that stuff. I understand how they want it to be different, but you know, there's so much they I don't know, there's just a different level of aware. I can kind of go for not everybody is at one level, and there's a lot of us are down here and a lot of us down, that kind of thing. And
Mm.
somebody has to lead, and what's the example, and what's good and what's bad, all of that. But um, everybody can't do their own thing, and like that. But um, there are some greater principles. I guess there's a higher level of consciousness. That higher level of consciousness says, like, if somebody ain't doing something to you, you know, and they're doing what they're doing, that's their problem. About
Yeah.
your the obligation in terms of right and wrong is really to look and to let them know the consequences of their actions that they are oblivious to. It kind of gets down to, like, the guy when I was in law school, I used to smoke cigarettes. I didn't smoke that much. That's the good news. Bad news, I did smoke, and the guy walked up and he goes, hey, man, you know, those things really cause cancer. He was a doctor going to law school and tells you, yeah, we got the data, man. It really does cause cancer. That's his obligation. He said, well, what I can do is to make sure we put a warning on the thing to let everybody know. But in terms of that decision, you know, I'm not going to put you in jail because you're smoking, you know, but I am going to tell you what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's not, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I'll tell you what the shoulda, wouldas, and couldas are, but you're going to do what you're going to do anyway, you know. So that freedom of choice, that supposedly we have as human beings, that's the most important thing. So anyway, these cats come up, oh, you shouldn't go to college, it's the world, and the world is going to pass away. Excuse me, you cats been saying that a long time. Now it might happen, you know. As a matter of fact, as I look at all the shit that's going on right now, it's like I have to tell my sister, hey, man, only thing I can say is you go, hey, give it to Jesus. That's about the only one that's going to solve this as far as I can see. Because these cats, man, they are so far out. They are so far out. There's very little that I can do, and apparently nobody else either.
Yeah.
It's just like he's marching to the edge of the cliff, man, talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I believe I can fly. It's a good song. I like the song.
So take me back to where you were maybe before I guess mom started studying with the witnesses. I know you guys were into Buddhism a little bit, and then she was going to a Pentecostal church. Where were you guys at that point in the story?
Well, when you say you guys, I can tell you where I was. I don't know where she was. Well, I can tell you where she was. Jan was a person who grew up, and I guess in her isolated environment or the context of her socioeconomic system, she was always looking for a community, a community of people that she could commiserate with, um, where there would be mutual support. I mean, as a woman, for example, having a child, then women need other women to support them. As best I can explain it to you, one of Robert and Marcia's friends, her name was Sabanfu, and she was either from Cote d'Ivoire or I can't remember which West African country she was from. It was a French-speaking country. Oh, I almost remembered it, but anyway, she said when she grew up, she didn't even know who her mother was until she was 4 years old, because every woman in the village would nurse every child in the village. If a child was hungry and there was a woman there, that woman would feed the child. She also told me and polygamy was okay. And she also told me she had an uncle, and he said, "I really don't want one." You know, he had one wife. He could have had 4 or 5. He said, one end, enough." You know, when his wife died, he said, "I'm clear. I don't want no more." He could have got a young one, whatever. Nah, you know. So, you know, but in terms of community, that community thing I was talking about, you know, every woman taking care of every child. The child was a child of the village, you know. The child was in the tribe, and you know, there was that mutual support for survival. That's that's the kind of world Jan was seeking, you know. Um, and you know, the Jehovah's Witness kind of offered that in a way. Um, Here in East Palo Alto, we were a small community. We knew everybody, the shared values, you know, yada, yada, you know, the whole thing. I mean, from that perspective, you know, being a Jehovah's Witness was very positive because it was very much akin to the situation in the South during slavery and then after slavery, where the church was sort of the center of the community. The minister was there, and it was the social focal point, values, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things going that were positive in terms of community. Um, and you know, shared values, and yeah, so you know, that's sort of what she was looking for. I mean, she went to New Sweet Home Church. She was always looking for that fellowship and community. You know, that's where it was at. You know, so I know that's what was motivating her.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that's really the commonality that she uh, felt with regard to Marcia and Robert. And even East Palo Alto kind of offered that, you know, before it was like Nairobi, you know, Nairobi
Mhm.
Village and all of that. So that's what was going on with her.
So,
Uh,
were you aware when she was first introduced to Jehovah's Witnesses? I think it was Santria's grandmother who came to the door. What were you thinking when she expressed that she was going to start a Bible study? Where were you in your terms of your journey?
oh shit, man. I was so far beyond. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a different thing. You asked 2 questions.
Yeah, I
All right.
did.
Yeah. Okay. So my journey. My journey probably began. because I think you're asking the context of Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah,
more,
just like what were you thinking
more
when
than
you first started?
more than
Yeah.
anything else. Yeah. So, yeah, my journey where it began. Whew, wow, it did really. I was born in Oakland in 1944. It was sort of towards three quarters of the way through the World War II. Okay, growing up in the projects. Wow, what an experience. Um, the long and short of this is we ended up moving out of there. There was a shooting next door, as in Oakland there always is. And my father moved the family down to Los Angeles, where we confronted um, racism that was very palpable. Couldn't even find a place to stay at all. But there was a Mexican family that let us stay with them. And then we ended up getting an apartment. Um, and ultimately, my father, he bought a house on Indiana Avenue, 748 Indiana Avenue in Venice. When we were there, this is probably about 1953, 1954. The Jehovah's Witnesses came knocking on the door. Okay. So, you know, they used to come by and knock and, hey, be quiet, man. They back, don't open the door, that kind of thing. Do, you know. And then ultimately, I guess that somehow they made contact. My mother was in the Baptist church, and she always, it was not anything negative. I mean, first thing I remember with my mom when I was little in bed, she would read the Bible to me, and we'd go like over the 23rd Psalm, and she'd always have prayers for the whole family, and we do that. So you know that's when I was in Oakland. I mean, before we moved to LA. I mean, those are my first recollection of um, religion and church and that kind of thing. Like she would take me to church on Sundays, uh, which I didn't really like because I had to get dressed up. They'd make me put on a tie and stuff. I mean, I was really, it always made me feel icky. That's the best I can explain it. I, I did not like putting on a suit, a little suit and a tie and stuff. But, I learned to read early. So, they would have me like reciting Christmas poems and things like that. So, and then I was baptized, I guess, when I was 5 years old, 4 or 5. So, that's sort of my religious experience going to church, fat lady singing, just that kind of thing. Yeah, I always liked music and stuff. So, but then I did like some Christmas poems. I memorized some things, and man, the people were very like ecstatic about that, and all of that. But anyway, so that's my earliest experience, in religion. I would say really, I mean, I recall my mother teaching me to read, and sometimes reading the Bible, you know, stories out of the Bible sometimes to me at an early age. Okay, so I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff because essentially, well, the Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, that's what you're asking about specifically. Okay, so when we lived in 748 Indiana, these Jehovah's Witnesses would come by and we'd hide and we wouldn't answer the door. And then we would sometimes, blah, 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 blah. They eventually caught up with my father, and my father straight up told them, like, well, I mean, if you're asking about believing in God, yeah, but I don't go to church, man. I found hypocrisy within it. They were just, he said, when I walked out, I said, I will never walk into a church again. Never. But he would discuss the Bible with them. They had some doctrinal stuff that he basically would say, that is nonsense. That doesn't even make sense. This is what it says. And then, the lady would open the book, start reading. And then he'd say, no, whatever. That didn't make any sense. That's not how people, he was like a common sense kind of a person who kind of understood what life must have really been like, because he was a man of the fields. And so he would argue with them, and then just keep reading, see what it said, and it would get there, and sure enough, he'd like shut it up. Oh, Miss Channel, you should really come to the hall. No, I ain't going in there. So that was my early experience. Uh, and then sometimes, say, oh, you have a son, why don't you sit down and while we go over this, And so, like, I would be there, why don't you read some, and I'd read a little bit, and then blah, blah, blah. The conversation would go on. All right. Then eventually my father would go, see you all later, that kind of thing. Okay. So somewhere along the line, dealing with racism, for me, uh, it was very personal. And I'll tell you straight up, like, um, I've had fights with Jews. There were some Jewish kids, man, they look at you and call you a nigger, And there was one kid that was a bully, a real bully. And he and I got into it, boy. I mean, it was like, yeah, it was bad, And anyway, but I didn't get expelled. He did, because he threw the first punch. But he did not get the last punch. That's all I could tell you. And he was a lot bigger than me, but some reason, something, I don't know. So I became very clearly conscious of racism and the abuse that I experienced as a young person. And then, uh, I would read books, and I remember the Jehovah's Witnesses come up one day and they say, well, God's going to make it all right. And then all the wicked will be destroyed. There are going to be those who survive. And it's going to be a brand new world. And it was like, that don't make no sense. I mean, why is he going to kill the people in Africa? Because they haven't accepted the Lord Jesus Christ, da, 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 da. So I say all that because at the end of the day, by the time I turned 16, I said, nah, man, this God stuff is ridiculous. There's no way. It wasn't like I rejected the notion of God being all powerful. It was more like, nope, nobody has stopped this bullshit that's going down on this planet. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. It don't feel good. And if a God is all loving and has all this power, why hasn't he stopped it? And because if I had the power and I'm not God, and I have this sense that it should stop, and if I had the ability to stop it, I'd stop it. And it hasn't stopped. So in my mind, there must not be a God. It's just that's just that simple, That's as far as I got, you know? So for me, uh, then I turned 16, I'm driving and, my mother says, hey, you need to go to church. And I go, man, mom, I don't believe in that. It was really, one of those things. I know it probably hurt my mother, deeply, but it was like, no, I there's no such thing as God. It's all superstition, nothing more than that. So because I rejected God totally, okay, you know, I don't want to hear it. It don't have nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with anything. It just has to do with what is. So that kind of set me off on trying to find the answer. If everybody wants to be happy, why are people so miserable? Why are people hurting each other? What why is there all this injustice, all of that? What is it? And for the black man, the only alternative, I mean, you could go into the military, you could go into sports, you could go into education, you could go into entertainment, or you could go to jail and prison. Those the five options. There were no other options. Some of us went into the military, some of us did entertainment, some of us went into education, some went into sports, and a whole bunch went into jail. Okay. And one of the first lessons I had learned in life was do not get a number. Do not, because they will put you in the pen. Don't steal, don't cheat, lie, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was like, because what happens is when people do that, they get caught, then they get a number, then they're in the system. So that was fundamental from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, when my father had his business, when the damn cops would stop him, the first thing they'd ask him is whether he was out on parole, because that was the way they maintained slavery, where you're living down there in Georgia and Texas and other places. Even if you were free, they caught you and claim you broke a law, and then put you in jail, and then send you to the farm where you had to work. You know that was part of the strategy, and I guess certain black men saw the game that Whitey was playing, you know, and they determined that they would learn from the lessons that were being taught by observing others, you know. And I think that that's why they had the ability to use their words in such a way to to basically tell white people to go to hell. It's sort of like the truth. It kind of hits, and if you have it in and you express it, it there's no backing away from it. You can run into it if you want, but there ain't no getting away from it. It is what it is. And so, for me, in terms of what we were talking about, um, after I rejected the existence of God, I was still seeking answers to questions. And so that led me down education, and it led me down every path in education, whether it was physics, chemistry, anthropology, sociology, psychology, I studied everything, and I still continue to study today. I had studied pretty much everything as much as I could. And so this kind of is where the convergence of comes in again, of Jehovah's Witnesses, Jan in her seeking a community. I mean, I was raised in a house, and so I had a family come in, and I wanted to make sure you kids had a house to be raised in, only because, for those who are raised in an apartment, you have less freedom. You're more constrained because of the walls. I mean, the people are closer and everything. There's not as much room. So I was raised in a house where I was allowed to explore, whether it's climbing on the roof, whether it's being up at 2 o'clock in the morning doing, it's just more freedom. Having a backyard, having a garage to mess around in and do things. It's just different. That's all I can tell you. Um, anyway, East Palo Alto was the only place I could afford a place. And fortunately, Jan's mother, she came through and advanced some funds, and I was able to get into this place. But this was, when I say, I mean, it was like really touch and go. I mean, it was unbelievable, the difficulty. And here in East Palo Alto, there had been restrictive covenants on the land. Stand by a minute here. There we go. There had been restrictive covenants on the land, and so it was not possible to. Well, it became possible to buy a place, put it that way, but it was Jack Ashworth next door. I selected this place instead of Menlo Park because of the train tracks. I mean, my grandmother had been in the Fillmore district next to railroad tracks and things like that. And it was not cool. I mean, I remember the sound of trolley cars banging and clanging and trying to get some sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it would stop for about 2 or 3 hours and it would start again. This is the other thing I was talking about, when all you want to try to do is rest, and all of a sudden you're jarred awake by, oh my God, and you're still tired because you haven't had any sleep. And this is just as a young person. I mean, anyway, I just remembered all of that. That's why I didn't buy the house in Menlo Park, because of those railroad tracks. I didn't want to be any place close to railroad tracks. Okay. I'm just far away from railroad tracks as possible. And I look back at it now as like, Facebook, they got a big fence up there. Ain't no trains running back there now. It probably would have been a pretty cool thing, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, so I'm here. I'm satisfied with what I got. But yeah, so we moved here. And, ultimately the Jehovah's Witnesses came around. Now, at that point, I had studied pretty much everything I mean, I had, a professional degree. I'd gone to law school. I'd been admitted to the California bar. I can walk in the federal district court. I mean, I had chosen not to become a doctor just because I didn't want to spend all that time in school. But I'm probably more talented in the scientific realm than I am in plus legal stuff. Running your mouth, it's boring. It just goes on and on and on and on ad nauseum, as you can see with the politics that are going on today. It's just really, I don't have the temperament. I mean, I have to actually make something happen. I have to make something has to move. Something has to happen. Um, I can't deal with that frustration. Anyway, the long and short of the whole story is I had studied everything else except really, really checking out um, Christianity. Now, I had come to the conclusion that there was a first cause. Something started it, okay? And whatever started things, I feel it is intelligent. There is such a thing as intelligence. There is such a thing as truth. And I got that through my study of metaphysics. I was a Rosicrucian for many years. I advanced to a very high state in that organization, but I kind of left it all and put like 100% attention into studying the Bible and the Word, because what the Jehovah's Witnesses, what they profess, we got the truth, if you study blah, 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 blah. Well, that's why I had all those various versions of the Bible. But one of the things that the Jehovah's Witnesses gave me was a passport to go and see if anybody had anything to say about the situation. So field service for me was like a license to walk up to anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your color is. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how little you have. I don't care how big your dick is. I don't care nothing except whether you have an answer. Have you figured this shit out? Do you know what's going on? What do you think can be done to change it? You can see how effed up it is. And when I realized I had the ability to go everywhere, anywhere, and ask those questions of every human being I ran into, wow, what an opportunity to really go and look and see and find out what's going on.
Pops, I want to back up a little bit because there's a situation where there's a drowning in the family. Mom was already studying with the witnesses.
Yeah.
Did that affect your interest at all? Like the Robin situation, what happened with Robin?
Did it affect my interest in what?
In the religion in Jehovah's Witnesses in being a Jehovah's Witness.
No,
Okay.
not really.
Because I remember that day, I went and had a conversation with Mom. I was like, well, we're going to see Robin again in paradise, aren't we? And that kind of triggered her to get more interested. I felt like after that point, she got very dedicated to being a Jehovah's Witness after that happened. Do you remember any change in her after that situation?
Uh, Jan always had a fatalism about her, um, even before Robin's drowning. Um, she was not a happy person. It was as if she had foreknowledge of her situation, the tragedy of her life. Um, she was a really beautiful spirit, a very positive person, uh, adventurous, and uh, humorous on one side. But the other side was a real dread of life and the experience of living. Uh, quite honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I I don't. I mean, I think the resurrection and the possibility of seeing, perfection manifest, including, the dead ancestors coming back into existence, and there being sort of a second chance to go through things again. It's a reality. I really don't know. What I recall has been Gaston coming through praying. I think it was another preacher who came through from the Lutheran Church, Bethany Lutheran Church.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the names of the people. They're very nice. In fact, we had the service there. We did not have a service for Robin um, in a Kingdom Hall. Um, Apparently, I guess she wasn't baptized at that point in time, maybe. So I guess the answer to this, yeah, she was studying at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the resurrection hope is something that motivated her, um, and it was a hope uh, that probably she had, um, but it really didn't solve the grief from the loss at all. I mean, it really didn't. So I would say that it was a factor, but I think it was probably the way, at the end of the day, I think the way she looked at it was more like I looked at the Mormons. I was like, come on, man, you cats want me to join your organization, but, I could never ascend to become a priest, high priest in your organization. Why? Why? That kind of thing. I think that was more her attitude. I don't think she had. I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I don't think she really ever got over the guilt
I don't think she did either. No.
of allowing him to drown. Um, uh, she really took personal accountability for that, and I don't think that there was anything on heaven or earth that could change that part of of her life, you know.
But at
Um,
this point, you weren't a witness. So what got you interested in actually studying with the witnesses? Because I remember being a kid, like being around a young kid and having a conversation with you about the devil, and I remember you saying there is no devil, and I remember my feeling of, man, Dad really doesn't believe in the devil. Like I really felt some kind of way about it. But so what got you to kind of change? What clicked for you at some point?
well, like I don't know. Um, well, I had studied everything else.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I had taken everything else to the max, man. What else you cats want me to do? You know, become a doctor? I don't know. Become a professor? Um, become a neurosurgeon? I mean, it's like, wow, man, you studied a lot of shit. You put a lot into this. Like, and that's what was so crazy about the Jehovah's Witnesses. They were talking about, this world is going to end and you shouldn't go to college, and I'm going like, you're saying people shouldn't go and learn and know things? That's stupid, you know? and say, well, you're not going to make any. Well, yeah, it is about making money. So you shouldn't be going to college to make money. You shouldn't be going to college to make money in the first place. You should already figure out how to do something. If not, learn something and go to college. Continue, I mean, it's about knowledge. It's about growth, intellectual. Human beings, we come from this thing called intelligence, the ability to communicate, all of that stuff. Going to college isn't just about making money. It's not about materialism. And so what they told me was, if you study with the Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll get the equivalent of what's going to a theological seminary. And I'm thinking like, oh, hot damn, I don't have to become a Catholic and go to a seminary for 20 years to become a priest in order to learn about religion and what's involved in the nature of God. It is fantastic. Okay, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And then when you get into it, and then this disciple making and preaching the good news to the kingdom and it all kind of fit into that whole thing. Damn, so I can go and knock on doors and find out the answers that other people have. You know, Man, this is a tremendous opportunity for education, for learning, to moving forward. And then, the whole thing of community, it kind of satisfied that whole thing that Jan needed. I mean, it got to a point where it was like saying, okay, if I don't join up with these guys, there's always this, you got a husband who's not a believer, and yakety yak, blah, 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 blah. But at least if I join up, at least there's a unified thing, and I'm eliminating a variable, essentially. And by eliminating that variable, now I'm able to focus, energy and time. And, I talked to Bobby Amiri last week. We were talking about, the beneficial thing of having a community, the beneficial thing of really coming home in the evening and having dinner with your family and being able to give each child attention specifically, at least once a week at bedtime, and having time together. Those are fantastic opportunities that this community presented for sustaining family values in a very real way, rather than sitting up and watching TV all night. It's just those kind of things. I mean, when I took a look at the benefits versus the burdens, of the burden of getting up on Saturday morning, going knocking on doors, you got to understand, I'd get up Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock to go to work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon every Saturday. That was my situation of going to work. So going and getting up and knocking on doors, oh yeah, because otherwise your ass is out making some money, washing windows, cutting grass, cleaning cars. you know you, you I come from working class. You didn't get to jack off on Saturday mornings. I mean, that's the long and short of the story, man. I mean, you might get Saturday off by 2 o'clock so you can go out and watch a movie, and then Sunday you're supposed to go to church, but you might get to just kind of hang on Sunday. But then Monday morning was always coming. You had to be ready. So, you know, Robin's drowning, it's just one of those tragedies, that happen. I understand the chain of causation and everything. that was involved. There are so many little things that could have happened along the way
Mm-hmm.
that would have changed the result,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't. That's the way life goes, you know. I mean, for me, I had a cousin named Michael. You know, he was one of the first to die of AIDS. He was close. I mean, they'd come by and stay, you know, and they'd stay at the house. I had another, his sister. She died when she was 16 in an automobile accident, freeway collision, something like that, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, death it's just a fact of life. That's all I can say. And there's different circumstances that play into this whole thing. But yeah, yeah, it's it, Robin's drowning. It was one of those unfortunate things, and you know, I mean, as they say, shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. You know, uh, I I don't really I don't really think very much of my own life in the big scheme of things. You know, I tend to think I'm more sort of like the indigenous Native American here. You know, it's I guess the song goes, "We're just dust in the wind," and yeah, the more longer I live, the more the existential nature of life itself is the most important thing. And I was thinking about Robert this morning as I was looking for something to throw on over here. It was like, oh yeah, man, Rod, he's not here, you know. Yeah, definitely, miss his presence and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know, it was his time, And I also think about Robin in the context of what he really brought to the planet during his brief time. And he brought a great deal of joy. He was a great little spirit. Uh, he was almost like kind of, and I always felt this. He came here to actually put things together and to reconcile. Um, I think the relationship I had with Jan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always felt that, and he served his function, he served his purpose, and then he got on.
Believe that too.
Yeah.
So, at what point do you get baptized, decide to become a Jehovah's Witness, and then become a minister or servant? That happened, I guess.
Oh well,
I
those are separate questions. Um, Number one, the baptism thing was that's their ritual. Amani, I was baptized when I was 4 years old. I didn't need any baptism.
agreed, agreed.
I had already been baptized.
Mm-hmm.
I'd already been dedicated. That's their thing. That's all. It's just, in studying sociology, read about ritual. Really, really get into reading and understanding what ritual is all about. It serves the human need to um, validate a belief. It is totally unnecessary. It's a To me, ritual is an act of vanity. But it means stuff to other people. Okay. If other people need it, so be it. I don't. So being baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, it's pretty much meaningless. That, to me, it's like putting a suit on and a tie. I did that too. I went through that ritual. That's just another ritual, man. Yeah, yeah. This me personally. It's got nothing to do. I mean, you're asking me a question, how I feel about it, what was going on with it, why did I do it? Apparently, the rest of you folks need it.
Right. Jehovah apparently needs it, I guess.
I guess y'all need it. I
Mhm.
don't, you know, to me. But I couldn't stand up and say, that's totally ridiculous.
No, you can't say that.
What in the hell? Well, it's in the Bible. Yeah, but there's some other stuff in the Bible that would tell you that you don't need to do that. That's irrelevant. It's an act of vanity. So to me, that's what it's about. Now, I understand it has different context to others, and that's part of being a human being and how human beings function in the herd. Okay. And that's good. I got nothing against it. Okay. So now I understand it, but you know, I don't think it made me a holy person. I don't think it invested me with some supernatural powers. I don't think it made me smarter than other people. I mean, that's it. So, if it symbolizes to them that now I'm part of this group, well, that's fine. But I was consecrated and dedicated to God by my mother and father when I was 4 or 5 years old, in terms of that symbolic act, you know. That's what it meant.
So you kind of look at things very differently than I think the average witness. You kind of look at things, I think, more pragmatically and educate, like it's more of an education process for you. That's kind of how you took it, which kind of explains a lot of things. It explains your attitude towards university or college and also the whole beard thing. Did that cause any conflict with the other elders, I guess with the other leaders of the
Oh,
congregation?
sure it did. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, including the guy that was district overseer and stuff. It's like, hmm. I mean, that whole thing where they disfellowshipped me, it was like, thanks a lot. Catch you later, boys. You know, what I found to be fascinating about that whole thing, because there were elders down in Palo Alto South involved. District overseer was involved, of course, Jonathan Cobb and that crew. Um, you know, uh, I'll tell you, that's the one moment I did feel like Jesus Christ. You know, it's like all you cats have turned against me. you know, like, you know, but that's what they do. Okay, that's what your friends. They're supposedly your friends and your lovers and all of that, and then all of a sudden they like turn against you. You know, like you're the bad guy. You did wrong, and we're gonna get rid of you. You know, and for me, it was so funny, man. Robert Robert says to me, man, they can't tell you They can't kick you out. How are they going to tell you what your relationship with God is? And like, fight them, appeal this thing. And I go, you're crazy, man. You're telling me to go break into jail. Why would I break into prison when they just told me to get out? He had never thought about it like that. He was thinking about it from an egotistical perspective. Somebody else is telling you how you are supposed to worship God and being a part of how they worship God. And you've essentially bought into their program, and they can't tell you you're not in their program. And as a man, you need to confront them and tell them, nah, you can't kick me out, you know? And then I'm like, dude, now I can go get some without worrying about it, Why? Come on. Just be straight up. I mean, bro, you're crazy. You know? Oh man, that's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. And as a matter of fact, no, they sent me a little letter talking about should you want to appeal. Adios. I'm gone, Jack. Thanks a lot. You just gave me a pardon. I didn't violate any of the rules. None of them. Didn't steal from y'all. Didn't, commit some fornication. I did absolutely nothing. And what you've told me is, well, sir, you're dismissed from your vows. Good. Bye. you know?
So why do you
Hey,
think?
I'm a free man. I'm a free man. And I love being a free man. I love it.
So why do you think they even took you to a judicial meeting then? Was it because maybe they were trying to pay you back for not making a shave or for allowing me to go to college and then finally mom having her interfaith funeral? I mean, what was kind of the basis of having this judicial meeting with you?
Well, again, I think your last statement was the basis. What was the last thing you said?
The mom's funeral.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I guess the way things were supposed to happen, it was supposed to happen in the Kingdom Hall.
No, mom was she was disassociated at the time though, so they couldn't do it at the Kingdom Hall.
She wasn't disassociated.
She was. I have her letter, Pops. She wrote her letter on in 1999, as a matter of fact.
No, she never sent that letter.
Oh, she never did?
She never sent that letter.
Oh, okay.
She never sent that letter. Yeah, she wrote the letter. Uh, see, that's the whole
Because
point.
I have the copy of the letter and I did a video. I did a video about it and everything.
Well, you have to go back and
I'll have to delete it.
let them know
I'll
what's happening. Yeah, no. Here's what happened.
Okay.
Okay, so as time progressed, Jan would say, "Gee, I'd like the folks to come by and visit me and stuff." And they were always out doing field service and stuff. And it's like, wow, man, these people are really wild. They're out here trying to find new life to get them into the congregation. Here you've got an existing member, and on Saturday mornings, people don't come by here to visit her, not on a regular basis. They're out knocking on doors trying to find more. This doesn't make any sense. You should be taking care of the person who is in, versus going looking. And it was very conscious, like whether it was Priscilla, whether it was this, that. The people just did not come by, and she needed that community. Okay, that's what she was about. So it was sort of like once she couldn't go to the Kingdom Hall all the time, then it's like people were often, I call it the theocratic treadmill. They're on the theocratic treadmill, you know, field service, come to meetings, da, 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 prepare, but da, 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 on the treadmill. For me, I said, no, man, like my ministry is take care of my wife. End of story. That's my ministry. I'm not going out in field service. I'm not doing anything. I don't care about hours. This is what, this is it. I love it. It was just boom. I mean, that's consciously inside. That is what I felt. I'm not even worried about, I don't care for the district. It doesn't matter. That's not my job. My function at this point in my life is to take care of my wife. This is my privilege. This is the honor that I have as a capable human being of doing something to help someone. That's why I'm here. I have no other reason for existence. You know, it's not a sacrifice to me at all. You know, it's an honor. And yeah, so what she said was, uh, I know I'm going to die. Um, and when I do, I do not want a boring ass Jehovah's Witness memorial talk. She also said, I'm out. And she wrote that letter. And I said, Jan, you know, Patricia Mary is the only one that's coming by. I said, you understand that if you write that letter and you send it out, they're going to tell her that you have disassociated yourself. So the one friend that you have will be told she can't come by. So I suggest you not send that letter. Don't do it. I mean, Patamiri is the only one. There might be a couple of others every once in a while. I said, but don't do it. So she never sent it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then after she passes away, the brothers say, hey, we want to have a judicial meeting and talk to you about a few things, or talk to you about resuming your spiritual activities. And is that kind of what happened? And then they
Oh, no. After, well, what happened was we didn't have our memorial service right away because Leslie did not take my suggestion and stop out for a whole year to reset before she went to University of Virginia. I think she just wanted to leave it all behind.
Mhm.
So college for her was a runaway experience. And she did. And Jan passed away August 21 or 22 or something.
2001.
Yeah. Uh, and so Leslie went to school. And so we deferred having her memorial service until the break, which was in December. And so we put that together over at Jones. And that was that. And Janet told me, she had given me some very strict guidelines. She said, anybody can say whatever they want, but they only get, I think, 3 or 4 minutes to say. She said, you can give an elegy, but you only have 10 minutes, play some Pat Metheny, and that's it. So that's what I did. I set it up over there at Jones. We did the whole thing. Boom, it happened. After I did that, his brother said, well, why didn't you have it in the Kingdom Hall? And I said, because Jan didn't want it in the Kingdom Hall. And I don't know. All hell broke loose after that. The next thing I know, you know, They said there was going to be a judicial committee meeting and this, that, and the other. And it was like, huh? What are you folks talking about? Now, that's a case where when they said they were going to bring me before a judicial committee, I was so fucking mad. Here's what I contemplated doing. Because Jonathan Cobb, he was, well, why didn't you? You know, why? Hey, she didn't want it, man. I said, look, I'm a lawyer by profession. Um, People entrust me to do things for them as a representative. I said, that's my professional training. I do what my client wants. I said, that aside, this is what she said she wanted. So this is what I did. And I don't know. They said they're going to bring me before this judicial committee. And all these knuckleheads that are around me, and I'm in the middle of the circle, in the circle of persecution, I call it. And the guys they were asking questions. I said, look, but here's the deal. When they said that they're going to have this judicial council meeting, and I had to show up and all of that shit, I was so fucking pissed. This is, I could be a terrorist. I told Bobby this last week also. I totally get being a terrorist, totally, and I'm crazy enough to be one because I have a lot of knowledge and I have a lot of skills, and I really don't care. Okay, I mean, when I say I don't care, I mean I really don't care about my own life. I mean, I literally do not care. So my first thought was, when you motherfuckers go and ask me why, I'm going to have her ashes. I'm going to take her ashes and I'm going to take them out and I'm going to throw it. And this is why you motherfuckers. Yeah. I mean, I had this whole thought just went through my mind, just like that, And I go, yeah. And you know what'll happen when you do that? First of all, it's going to be in the newspaper. You're going to be guilty of a crime. Desecrating the remains, scattering them in the kingdom of.
Imagine.
No, I, I had the ashes, man. I mean, it was like, I couldn't let these plays out in my mind. Man. Don't do it. Don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do that.
Yeah, that would have been a bad move.
I would have been all right. Who cares? Who cares? I don't care. Yeah, I would have been in jail and would have been, but I decided, no, man, just don't. You won't have to go to jail. You won't have to be. Just go get some, man.
So they end up just.
I'm telling you the truth, man. I don't know, man. I'm just, this is what it is, man. I mean, this is who I am. This is what this shit is all about. I don't know. It's some crazy. I have no idea what those cats were dealing with, man.
Right.
I to this day, I do not know. What I do know is I read the book of James, and the book of James has a scripture that says, love throws fear outside. Okay. And the district overseer, as they were talking about, well, we've decided to disfellowship you, he looked around at the group. He says, we don't know what he might do. I said, fear.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, by definition, love isn't here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're speaking for the whole organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yahoo! I'm out. Out the parking lot, blew my horn, and I haven't looked back. And like I told you, every once in a while there's, after that, there was a couple of discussion groups and stuff, and people are talking about their trauma of being Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm like, dudes, y'all need to leave this crap behind, and I don't know, you need to go, turn it loose, Jack. I get depressed even. I'm up here listening to what you guys are doing, and then all of a sudden I'm getting mad and
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting traumatized listening to what happened to you because you keep talking about it
Right.
instead of just leaving this stuff and just pull it out the parking lot and say adios. you know, I ain't trying to prove nothing to none of y'all, you know. But that's the story. So yeah, after about that, whatever, there was a Usenet group or something, a discussion group up, former Jehovah's Witnesses suffering from trauma, going to counseling and all that. Man, I deleted that crap. I mean, I say deleted the crap. I I just don't want to put my mind into the trauma that other people have had,
Mm-hmm.
because what I want to tell them is like, well, I don't know, man, turn it loose, but I
Yep.
understand they were raised in it. It was part of their value system. It was their total social environment for conditioning. The trauma is still there, reliving that stuff. The way I kind of get away from trauma to the extent I can is to, put something else in its place,
Right.
and by putting other stuff, whether it's music or whatever, just putting other stuff in its place, that puts me in a different place, so yeah. Every once in a while they come by and talk about like, hey, are you interested in coming back? And it's like, huh? I mean, number one, I didn't leave. You kicked my ass out. So how am I going to come back to something that you kicked me out from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, there's no going back. Y'all need to come forward.
Yep.
And y'all have, and from what I'm hearing from you, they're still 30 years behind. they just they just figured out that there may be some beneficial aspect of going to college and learning something how to think. Oh my
Did you
goodness.
get the sense when you were in the organization that they really didn't want their members thinking or getting any sort of outside information to
Well, that was
maybe?
explicit,
Okay.
wasn't it? But didn't they
I think so. Yeah. I think it was definitely the culture not to educate yourself, not to get any sort of outside information. Definitely, they just want you insulated, getting information from the Watchtower and Wakes.
Right. I think they always talked about people going apostate, people would have this, that, or the other. I mean, sure. They were saying that your faith could be destroyed, you know, by, I guess Satan goes around like a roaring lion seeking
Seeking to devour
powers
someone.
among
Yep.
us. and like don't become a victim and all of that.
It
Sure.
definitely, it definitely is a culture of fear within the witnesses, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that well, it's a cause the whole thing is it's built on the false premises, as is organized religion, that if you don't do it our way, you're not going to get the reward. you know but the reward itself is really weird. The reward is what you're going to lose, right?
Mhm.
You're going to lose your life and death. Okay. The reward is you get your life back. But there's no proof that anybody has ever gotten it except Jesus Christ, who they say came, but he cut out again, but he ain't back yet, but he's coming back again. I mean, so it's like you've got this echo of nothing, right?
Mhm.
So as you look at the world situation now, it seems pretty dire and pretty catastrophic. Um, and all I can say is, well, I guess y'all gonna have to give it to Jesus, because I think that is true. I mean, I tend to go, in that direction. And as I look at the United States, and you got these tornadoes and windstorms and all this other catastrophe that's happening in the so-called red states. All I gotta say is, hey, I don't know, man. Maybe that's some act of God, being exacting revenge on a godless group of people. Um, they haven't hit Donald Trump yet, so I don't know. I think I'm coming to the conclusion um, that pretty much everything that's going down is intentional. Uh, that there is a plan in place, and the things that seem to be irrational, uh, they only appear to be irrational or stupid or whatever. I think it's just part of a project, a plan of these guys just doing stuff. Really, I think that's the bottom line on it. Um, that's the conclusion I've come to today. That it's not even anything I can do anything about or worry about. Really, um, just my existence is all there is, and that's I just do the best I can with what I got and what I'll be doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. What's your take on this whole thing, man? I mean, um, I know you having been raised in the so-called truth. I mean, I try to hopefully give you kids the freedom to grow and to learn, and also to protect yourself and to pass on the values that would maximize your chance of having a quality life. And I mean, I was very, very conscious of that. So that'd be my question to you. I mean, um, I think if you look at any society, you've got um, children who are indoctrinated, enculturated, civilized, so to speak, and given the tools and the values that will enable them to have a higher quality of life than, say, a parent did. That's what my parents did for me. Hopefully, I passed that on to you guys. I mean, that was at least my intent. So, I tried to make sure you got the good stuff. And to the extent people were talking about stuff that I didn't think made any sense, to empower you to, ignore those things and go forward. I mean, that's sort of my, regret with regard to Leslie. I mean, she had a great embouchure. She wanted to play the saxophone. Um, what I underestimated was the power of the social environment to shape others who have who are not on the spectrum as I am. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm truly on the spectrum, and I understand that now. Not as bad as some, but certainly more than most.
Mhm.
And, it's like she was, she had this clarinet, man, and God, man, she has this great tone, man. And I'm going, yeah, man, like, stick with it. And she was going, well, they want me to play in the Christmas thing. And like the brothers aren't going, man, forget the brothers, man. They're nothing but notes, man. Whether it's a Star Spangled Banner or Merry Christmas, Santa Claus, it's just this, just notes. There's billions of notes, Don't worry about it, is what I told her. And she goes, nah, the brothers aren't going to let this go.
Mhm.
She didn't have faith in me, man.
Mhm.
She didn't have confidence that her pops would have her back. You understand? She was more conscious of the social environment, that she was raised in.
I wanted to ask you about that because, as I read and as I've been looking at a lot of these witnesses who've been complaining about the new change in college, I don't remember the brothers ever coming up to me and saying, Brother Channel, why are you going to college? It's not a good move. Did you have a conversation with them prior once they got word that I was going to college, or was there any sort of conversation with them about being exemplary and they knew not to come mess with me? I'm just curious.
I don't know if they did. I told them none of their business.
Okay.
It's personal. It's personal. It's got nothing to do with anything.
Hmm.
Well, what I said was, look, man, I make $65 an hour. Okay. How much do you make washing windows? You're talking $12 an hour. So if you're talking field service, you've got to work 3 hours versus working 1 hour. What sense does that make? If you wanted to have an hour to go out and field service every day, you've got to work 8 hours, whereas another person only would have to work 3 to 4 hours. Just look at the reality, you know? I mean, whenever we did have that conversation, I definitely had that conversation with Ben Gaston, and he agreed, you know. So I mean that is what put Ben on the outs with those guys too.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, he was always, you know, yeah, yeah. Ben was an intelligent guy.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's the name of the game, man. I mean, you're living in a material world. Do the math.
Yep.
Do the math. You're the one turning in hours, you know? Come on.
So after these fellowships, did you feel a sense of loss in any way, or were you just like on to the next part of your
Oh,
life?
hell no. Pussy is good, man. A loss. What did I lose? I felt like smoking a joint. I had smoking a little bit. What do you mean? Feel a loss? You know, probably the only loss was, wasn't able to tap a couple of those sisters in there that might have been somewhat interesting, but
Oh my gosh.
that's about, and I didn't really feel any loss there, but because what I was able to do in terms of having a girlfriend and everything without somebody being on my case.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was that was really good.
So,
Yeah.
in retrospect, I think you did a great job because you raised your children to be free thinkers, to be critical thinkers. You didn't let the doctrine of the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a lot of times unbiblical, you never let that like influence you. You always let us kind of be autonomous. And you protected us from the ignorant dogma of the Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. So I give you kudos. I think you did a great job with your children.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so how do you spend your days now, Pops? I'm just curious.
Oh, practicing.
Mm,
I practice music, uh, or I perform like that telephone call that I got. I actually need to get back. The guy wants me to sub in on a gig tonight. Um, but I actually have another gig this evening. I'll be playing from 6 until about 8 o'clock. Make a few dollars and probably get a free drink and
mhm,
uh, play some music, hopefully, and meet some nice people, maybe make some tips. That's basically what I do. I practice and play music and study, read, um, kind of looking at the politic situation today, how things are going. I find that this nation, I think it's a civilization or a country that has fallen off of its pedestal, that there is a total shift in the world order. I believe the uh, Chinese are going to become the dominant power that moves and shapes civilization, and that the so-called United States will become like, I'd say, sort of like a third world country. I
mhm.
think that that's sort of where we're headed. Um, I think there's a lot going on with respect to technology. Um, I think that the capitalist system, as it's been employed by the Western Europeans, and including the United States as a dominant political force, it will um, have to find a different place in this world. Um, and then we'll see how the other world order that's going to be put in place, how long that will hold up, and what will happen at the end of the day with that. But that'll be long after, my existence is over, and we'll see. See, I think there will be life on the planet in some form.
I think so too.
Um, that's
And
about.
Jehovah's Witnesses will still be waiting for Armageddon.
Yeah, well, and they'll probably get theirs, one way or the other. Um, there is this idealization, at least a dream, that there will be perfection if it doesn't already exist someplace.
Mhm,
I mean, if you really get into the question of time, um, we don't really know that what we're looking at right now is nothing more than an echo of something that has already occurred,
mhm,
even this conversation as we're having it. Um, and when it occurred, I don't know. I mean, there are sometimes, when I think that life itself, as we perceive it, is just a reflection of an incident that has occurred somewhere else, some other time that just manifests itself now. And that there may be multiple dimensions in terms of time and space that exist. And yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the ultimate reality
mhm.
that way. Um, I think sometimes when you're watching, movies or sci-fi movies, I think that there are artists who have kind of had these same inklings, and they've written these stories about a different world and, that kind of thing. that sort of manifests itself here, and there are these strange people who seem to have clairvoyance or more knowledge or insight.
Telepathic or advanced skills
Yeah,
or
I saw
songs.
a movie yesterday. I'd seen the movie before, and and then I had forgotten that I'd seen the movie, but then I saw the movie, right? And there was this one scene where this person answers a question that all the physicists in the world or scientists in the world couldn't answer, and he gives them the answer, and they say, "How did you figure that out?" And he says, "I can't tell you, because if I told you, you just destroy yourselves." you know,
Yep,
and which tends to,
be
you know,
true.
at an age, maybe I was like, oh, I would probably say 22, 23 years of age. I finally said, wow, every time there's this advancement in human knowledge and understanding of physics, how things work, what things are, you know, a human being will go and they make a weapon out of it and they
Yep.
start killing other people. I mean, that's what they do, you know.
That's kind of the mentality of humans right now. They haven't evolved yet past the need to kill each other, which I hope we'll get to soon. But yeah, they're still living in that sort of a caveman mentality where we have to kill you to survive.
Right, right, yeah,
Mhm.
and it really gets into, like, we're fighting over the lack of abundance, and it turns out
It's
what
here.
we were
It's
fighting over is more than abundance.
yep,
You know,
exactly.
it's like, oh my God, what are we doing? What are we doing? And it's like, maybe that's just the nature of man,
Mhm.
you know. That's the manifestation of this type of an existence, and which, when I've been looking at these nature programs of lions, fighting eagles, and it's hippopotamus, it's like, man, those are forms of life, and when
Mhm.
you look at their life cycle, all they do is copulate and fight and
And
die
eat.
and eat
Yep.
each other.
Yep.
And this form of life, this is the manifestation of it. It there it the other form of life, whatever it is, may not be this one at all.
Mhm.
You know, and yeah, and maybe all we have on this planet is evidence of what this form of life is. And I guess my only other insight would be, uh, there aren't any dinosaurs that we know of. Those life forms existed at one point in time. And I
Mhm.
can't help but think that they experienced hunger, they experienced fear, whatever those emotions are,
Mhm.
and they fought and they copulated, yada, yada, yada. And those life forms no longer exist in those forms, but life itself goes on, and all we have in this form of man is we go back and we look at those things and we have an understanding, we call it intelligence, to say, boy, that form of life was actually here, it had a form, it functioned. What must the world have been like, then?
Mhm.
And, you know, for what comes after this, they may be looking like, we look at the pyramids and go, wow, how did they do that?
Mhm.
They may be looking and saying, wow, what, what was happening? I don't know.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's the story.
Right, so before I let you go, I got to ask you my fire seat, my hot seat questions. I have a few of them. So the first one would be, what's the most important lesson that you've learned in life so far? What's the most valuable lesson have you taken with you or have you experienced in life?
uh, the most important lesson is now, it's existence. You know, put it this way, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Pretty much that's it. Um, you know, thought and words are one thing, but those things are always translated into doing. And as in the human capacity to do, you know. Um, so that you only do when you have existence.
Mm.
Thus, life is an existential issue. As long as you're alive, you have the ability to do, and your ability to do is really what gives you satisfaction in life. That is what living is about as a human being. So that becomes important. Um, the other thing I guess I've learned would be what my father taught me. You look in the mirror, you will see yourself, and you will know what the truth is. The man that you're looking at knows everything. Uh, know what you got right, know what you got wrong, know what's true, what's not. Uh, and the other thing my father told me that once you die, only the people who remember you really matter.
Mm.
The people who don't know you, they're not going to remember you at all. You don't really count as an individual
Mm.
to those who don't know you. And thus, what you do, oftentimes, if it's significant enough, they may be affected by it, and they may, in fact, know who you were or learn who you were. But outside of that, if they don't know you, you haven't done anything, you no longer exist. It
Gotcha.
doesn't. It really doesn't matter. And I think that's pretty much true. That's what Solomon also said, by the way. If you read Psalms, Ecclesiastes, and really get into it, um, I think the way he expressed it was um, there's no work, there's no remembrance of who you are, what you did when you die.
Where are you now with your faith or with your belief system? What do you practice anything now?
Yeah, I meditate, I rest, um, and I kind of probably am more sort of like on the Buddhist side of this equation.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I exercise. I think that becomes really important as I age to really make sure I'm getting some time to get fresh air and breathe. Just keeping myself in shape. Limiting the consumption of alcohol. I don't do hardly any weed or edibles or anything like that anymore. Food. I've never been really a big fan of food, so I was a big fan of food, but we were so poor. It's like I didn't really get to eat a whole lot when I was younger, and my mother was such a bad cook. I'll tell you, man. I never got into eating very much, so I think that's benefited me over time,
Mm.
in the sense that I have to tell myself to eat and everything. I start losing energy and stuff like that. But yeah, that's sort of it.
Last question. What would be your definition of a spiritual awakening? And with that in mind, what would be your advice to someone who's going through a spiritual awakening or having some questions about how they were brought up or their beliefs or something like that?
I I don't know. you just keep searching and finding the truth. I mean, I think the fundamentals have all been, sort of articulated.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't lie, you shouldn't cheat, you shouldn't steal, you should be, honor your mother and your father. I mean, you know, when I really think about the values, I mean, that one thought, to honor your mother and father, to bring honor to the people who have suffered to bring forth your existence. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is yeah, I mean, that's, it's not like to get to heaven or anything, but to really bring honor to those who have brought you forth, you know. If you think about the ancestors, I mean, when I look at Salim and look at you and Leslie and my cousins and all of that, I mean, my grandmother, I mean, I don't know. She had 14 children. I learned last week that she only had 7 of them through, this other direct descendant line. But she still had 14 kids, man. It's like, oh my goodness. And I said, well, yeah, but 5 of them was her sister's kids and she raised them. Oh my goodness. you know, um, to bring honor to Clemmy Jackson, I mean, it's like, wow, she's my grandmother, but then there was a great grandmother out there, and there's somebody who made that passage, you know, and then when you finally go, wow, man, yeah, the black man, yeah, he's brought a whole lot. Maybe if it wasn't for the black slave, this country wouldn't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
It had to bring these Negroes over here to get to work, to get something done, because as one white boy said, every time we're out in the sun, we blow up. That's what he said, which is go, oh, wow. And the other day, man, I was walking, I saw this Chinese woman. She was fine, man, but she looked like she was about 7 foot tall. I mean, it's like, wow. And then I remember, who was that basketball player?
I think for the Rockets, the Chinese one,
Yeah,
Yao Ming, Yao Ming.
Yao Ming. Yeah, I mean, she was a bit, I said, oh my. And she was in the supermarket, it was like, whoa. Oh my goodness, man. There's some human beings being born that are just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, bringing honor, So when you think about the cats who are out, slinging this and doing that and all of that, it's like, that's fucking honor to your mama, you know? What's your mama think about you doing that, and how you're doing it, or smacking women around? Come on. Come on, man. You know, it's pretty clear. Yeah. And so, yeah, you can look at that as articulated values of the Judaic Christian creed. I guess
Mm-hmm.
you can look at it like that. But those Israelis, what they're doing to the Palestinians, I'm sorry, bro, that's wrong. y'all ain't supposed to be doing that. You know, that's some Old Testament stuff. And y'all are wrong. And that's all right. If you just want to have one nation, that's cool. But you know what the book say? The book says there's one law for everybody, whether it's the alien residing amongst you or your family or your brothers or anything else. One law, Jack. You can't treat people different. I ain't said it. I'm just the messenger. I'm just letting you know what it says. So y'all got to stop shooting people who ain't done nothing to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are doing that, you're wrong. you're wrong. There ain't no right in it, ain't no justification for it. And that's the truth.
Charlie, hopefully I'm bringing honor to your name. I pray that I am. And I want to thank you so much for answering my question. It's been a few moments. It definitely is an honor to spend some time with you.
Well, thank you.